On this rainy day, we're going to talk about the many ways chickens can put money into your pocket. Okay, folks, the other video that we did in the past, the last time we did the chicken tractor on steroids, we discussed the dollars and cents. And please refer back to that as far as the way we did it the first time. Now, as you can see behind me, now I can't take the covers off right now because clearly it's raining. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 piles down there. And each one of those piles, except for the last one, is 3 cubic yards worth of finished compost for the most part. The last one down there is actually more than that. In total, we have 19 and a half cubic yards in about 17 weeks, folks. And that alone, in and of itself, is pretty darn impressive. So, we're going to go up to the house right now, and we're going to talk about, this is all going to make sense here in a minute. We're going to go up there and talk about, at least where it's a little drier on the front porch, and discuss the ways chickens make you money and how you can raise your birds for free and get your fantastic compost for free. All right, so let's get down to brass tacks. We're going to talk about the ways in which you can make money with the chickens. Okay, so in this batch, we had 126 pounds total. That's what we processed. Now, we started with 38 birds in this batch. Even though we ordered 45, I think we lost a few, but we put 4 in the barn. It was initially 3, but one escaped during the time we were doing the processing, and we figured, okay, well, she earned her spot, so she's number 4. So we did 38 birds this time. And on average, we got about 3.3 pounds if you just kind of break that down. So, and that's per bird, okay? So when we get down to the cost of it, the birds were roughly $120. Now, this is considerably cheaper than the last batch we got. We went to another hatchery, and this batch here, I can't remember which hatchery we went to, but they were essentially $267 a bird. Just keep in mind, next time we do this, it'll be 0 per bird. So that's going to be a massive cost savings there. Now, the bedding, there were a few times I went down and I went to the, I'm not going to give that place any recognition after what just recently happened, but that's another story. So let's just say I went from one place I used to get bedding from to one of the local places, which turned out to be much better bedding anyway. And the only reason I had to do it is because we had so many irons in the fire that I wasn't taking the wood chips from around here or taking the leaves, all the other things I could have acquired right here. Well, not doing that cost me money. So bam, there we go, $40. The feed for this batch, another thing that's different. Now, the last time I needed considerably more feed because it took me longer to get them out on the pasture. I think the reason for that was me and William were making the chicken tractor, the meat bird chicken tractor for this particular thing. So it took longer to get them outside. This time we got them out really, really early, much earlier than before. So the initial feed cost, and that was organic feed this time out, was, let's say, $50. And that's actually probably a little bit high. They didn't really require as much. But when we got them out there, we were already feeding them things like, and it was William's idea. At first, I was a little concerned with this batch because, I mean, find me a bird that doesn't eat bread. These guys weren't taking the bread right off, but William thought, you know what? Let's try that rice, that non-GMO rice we get. And because it looks like maggots, I think was his thought behind it. Well, it turned out to be a brilliant thought because these guys were already eating food scraps long before the time we did the last batch. So there you have it. Now, we're going to get into the more controversial part, and that's the cost of your labor. You know, if I didn't include that, and I understand a number of people out there that do this sort of thing, when they do their dollars and cents, most people don't figure in labor costs. But my homeboy, Pork Rind, absolutely convinced me to be absolutely copious about the notes I took on labor. And honestly, when you get down to brass tacks, I understand both sides of that argument. I understand that if you're leaving it at the homestead, really doesn't matter. But like, we're talking about making money with these birds, so you have got to figure in your labor costs. Now, in this particular case, I think it came out to be, I think it was closer to 54 hours, but I went ahead and rounded it up to 60 for good round numbers. And so let's say you're making 20 bucks. Let's say you're going to charge yourself 20 bucks an hour. That's what Joel Salatin does. So good enough for him, good enough for me. I'll give it a shot. So that comes up to be about 1,200 bucks on labor. And that's figured quite heavy. In fact, just so you know, all of these numbers are padded more because I don't want to give the false impression that this thing's better than what it is. Because honestly, I want to know. I want to know what the dollars and cents. I want to know the value of this whole system. So with labor and feed, bedding, birds, everything added up is $1,410. Now, here's where we get in, at least with this system. I think somebody would debate this, I'm sure, but I don't think it's up for debate. And that's the profit of the compost. Now, in this system, we made the equivalent. I think last time out, we got maybe 7 cubic yards of compost. This time out, we got 19 and a half cubic yards because we raised these birds considerably longer than we ever did before. Wow. So if you go to town, last time I didn't look at the prices, but the last time I did, I think they were wanting around 60 bucks for compost. And when I say compost, I'm talking the best stuff they had. And even that is nowhere, not bragging here, just keeping it real. That compost is nowhere near, and I've said it numerous times, as the compost you make at your place. It's like taking a person that's an Eskimo and dropping them off at the equator, or vice versa. They're not going to do very well if you put them out there and expect them to survive. It's the same thing with your microbes. So the compost you make at the house, the stuff you make at home is going to be light years better than anything you're buying that might have come hours and hours away. Different microbes altogether. And look into the work of Dr. Elaine Ingham if you doubt me. Anyway, so in that case, if we're charging 60 bucks a cubic yard, well, we're going to subtract that. That comes out to be 1,170 bucks. Subtract that from the cost, and bam, what are we left with? 240 bucks. That's the input cost, right? Well, that's the cost minus the compost, and that's what we're left with, 240. So we're going to divide that by 126, which is the weight of our birds. And so in order to pay myself, this is this is important. If I were going to sell these birds, which is what we're going to talk about here, I would have to get the equivalent of $1.90 per pound for these birds. COuld I get it? I think that's a legitimate question. I mean, honestly, anybody with any sense is going to say, even a bird that was raised in a CAFO operation, you're going to charge more than $1.90 per pound. Okay, let's say you were, but what's the quality of those birds? These birds were raised well, given organic feed early on, and then given non-GMO food scraps for the rest of their lives. So let's get down to brass tacks. $1.90 is what I'd have to get for it in order to pay myself 20 bucks an hour. Now, I looked at the local high-end butcher shop that's near here. And it's more of a mom and pop type operation. But their local retail prices for these things, let's say for a whole bird, comes out to be about $5 a pound. Okay, if I were charging about $5 a pound, you can do the math on it. That's almost, if I were getting $5 a pound for this bird, then I'm getting almost the equivalent of $30 an hour for my labor. Okay, that's if I sold the birds whole. But now, look at it another way. First of all, if I'm going to sell something, I'm going to want considerably more for my money. So I'm not going to sell too many birds whole. In fact, if you doubt me, go into your local grocery store and see what the cost is for a whole bird and look at it priced per pound. Then go look at the other parts and pieces and see what that is. So in this case, at the local butcher shop, with birds that aren't quite as good as the ones we have here, a breast alone, a boneless, skinless breast, we're talking $12 a pound. Now, get in higher. I couldn't put all of it in here. I ran out of a blackboard here. So the thigh, $8 a pound. The backs. Now, what I mean by chicken backs is basically everything's been stripped off of it. All you're left is basically a cavity with a little bit of meat left on, a little bit of meat attached. They're getting $7 a pound for that. I didn't put in the wings or anything else. And I think the chicken feet was $6 a pound for chicken feet. It's pretty incredible when you break it down. So if I sold a whole bird at $5, now imagine what you would get. Now I haven't done the numbers on it, but just off the top of my head, if you were to piece these birds out and sell the backs beaks. You could even go down to gizzards and everything else. If you were to do that, I would bet any amount of money. Like I said, if you were selling them at $5 a pound, you're just under $30 an hour for your work. But if you were to piece the entire thing out, I would dare say you probably approach, and I'm not exaggerating here, I would guess that it's somewhere around $40 an hour within this system. Now, folks, doing it on conventional feed, there's no way you're going to get these numbers, okay? Now, keep in mind, it does require a bit more work, and I accounted for that. But if you were to break these birds down, and I showed the people that came out here to butcher, they know how to butcher a bird whole, and they know how to break it down both ways. And really, I can break down a bird in less than a minute. So it's probably worth your time to do that. You can sell them whole. That's fine. But this is a way of adding value to a product, in this particular case, adding value to a product with really not much effort at all. Just by knowing how to break that bird down, you're getting a king's ransom for it. Within this system, this is why it's no hardship for us to give away so much chicken, because honestly, the biggest thing we wanted out of it was to make absolutely sure this system works and to improve it, which we did, and also to get more compost, which we need, and also to be able to give away more chicken to the people that came to help out. So it was no hardship at all. Now let's talk about the other things you can do in terms of value adding. What about all that compost? Okay, so we got nearly 20 cubic yards of compost, and that's significant. So what if you were to transform it into potting soil? You're roughly going to get about 40 yards out of that. You could sell that, you can make some money out of it. What about compost tea? You could sell that, also make some nice money out of it, especially when it's stuff that's of this kind of quality. So think about this. If you have a system where within this compost, and we're talking about the value adding things you can do, you could sell it straight up and get $60 a yard, which is what we're accounting for here. But what I'm trying to point out here is there are so many ways to add value to the things that already have value, just by cutting your chicken up a little bit more. It doesn't take that much effort. Or taking your compost, stretching it out, making potting soil. Or let's say you have a home nursery. Wow, how many things can you get off and running on that? The possibilities are endless. They really are. There's so many different ways. And like I said, I figured this low. So if you're looking to make money on a system like this, is it going to require some work? Absolutely. Is it going to be hard work? Sometimes. But I got to admit that from the last time we did this until this time, we were able to do it much more efficiently, much faster, and it worked out even better. And like I said, the next time we do this again, guess what? That cost is going to go away. This bedding cost, the price of the birds and the bedding costs are going to go absolutely away. And the feed costs, we're probably going to lower that even more. So if you knock that down even more, that's even more money in your pocket, because the next batch of birds, like I said, are not going to come from a hatchery. They're going to come from here. Okay, a little bit of an addendum to what I said, and of course it's the next day, but it was important that we add it, and William thought of it last night. And that is the most obvious way to make money with this, and that is teaching classes, showing others what you know how to do. And that's part of what I'm hoping to do, is that we train up some people. They become competent, which they already are, and then in the future train others to do the very same thing. And you want to typically charge something when you do this sort of thing, because fundamentally people think that if something is free, that it's worthless. You and I both know that's not the case, but that's fundamentally what most people think. Now, folks, the reason why we are on top of this system the way we are, the reason why I think this chicken tractor on steroids is game-changing in every way, is that, think about it, we would have total food security if just a fraction of the people in this country were able to access food scraps, feed them to your omnivores like your pigs and chickens, and turn back around, make fantastic soil, and at the same time make meat that is mostly free. So consider that. All right, so folks, I hope this, I know people, typically people want to tune out when you start talking numbers. So I try to keep it concise and simple. I could go into much greater detail in all of this. The most important thing is, folks, if you're looking to make money in farming or any kind of, you got to do the numbers on this. You got to find out whether or not it works, whether or not it makes sense. But like I said, At 20 bucks an hour and not working that hard, it already turns out to be pretty darn profitable. And you can make it even more profitable just by adding a little value by doing a tiny bit more work. Same thing with your compost. So there are numerous ways out there in which you can make this pay for you. Remember, we got those t-shirts out right now. And all the proceeds until the rest of the year go to Veterans for Child Rescue, worthwhile organization. Check them out. So remember, subscribe, get the notifications, and tell your friends about us. Until next time, this is Billy, the Permaculture Pimp Daddy, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion, because it is. We'll see you next time.